Thank you all for joining today. This is actually a continuation of the Accessible Driving and Transportation series that we've been doing for the Advocacy Series. We started last year. We did a community panel towards the end of last year where some of our community members talked about different types of transportation that they use, either daily transportation, like within the city, getting to and from school or from work, or for travel, different types of transportation, public transportation that they use for travel. So definitely go back to our YouTube channel and watch that if you didn't get to see that. But today's focus is on adaptive vans and accessible driving. So this is going to be more for our adults with FOP who maybe are now using a wheelchair either part-time or a scooter part-time or a wheelchair full-time. That want to still be able to get out and enjoy the community and time with their family and friends and maybe getting to and from school or work. So we're just going to do a brief overview of the adaptive vans, what kinds there are, what options there are. And joining me today, I have Pat Doherty. He is from United Access, which is a part of Brownability, and that's one of the largest, more well-known names for accessible vans and driving. So Pat's with us today, and he's going to be able to answer a ton of questions as we zip through these slides. But like I said, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we will get to them at the end. Why don't you go ahead, Pat, and just introduce yourself and tell a little bit about United Access and where you are and what the company does.
Great. My name is Pat Doherty, and I am here in Lenexa, Kansas, which is Kansas City for those that aren't from around this area. United Access now has upwards of 48 to 50 locations, so continuing to grow. Got a bunch in California now, so they're really spreading out. Again, we're all dealers of Brownability, as she mentioned, and we do wheelchair accessible minivans. We do lifts on full-size vans. We do hand controls for somebody that needs to drive with them. We do lifts in the back of cars and also in the hitches, so someone can take their scooter with them. And that's the majority of what we do as far as installs. We have an install team and a repair team that fixes things that need to be fixed and installs things that need to be installed. So a lot gets done.
All right, so then basically just really quickly, what is a wheelchair accessible vehicle? If people don't know, and a lot of times there's an acronym too, WAV, WAVE. So just give us a brief overview of what an accessible vehicle means.
Yes, so when we talk about an accessible wheelchair vehicle, it's a minivan or an SUV, like used to be an Explorer, and now is a Chevy Traverse. And what that is it has a power door on the passenger second row, and the door opens, the ramp comes out, and the van kneels to the ground. So that ramp angle is around 9 degrees. So a wheelchair user can easily get up the ramp and into the second row. The wheelchair user can ride in the second row, or the seats can be removed, they can drive, or they can be in the front passenger. The floor is lowered from the third row all the way up to the firewall in the front, like where your feet go. And that allows you to give lots of room to maneuver while the wheelchair user is inside the van. There's a third row there that can fit up to 3 regular size adults. And then there's also the driver and the passenger. So you can have, 3 people in the back, 2 in the front, and the wheelchair user in the second row. So you can have up to 6 people. So more than you think. And these are Toyota Siennas, they're Dodge Grand Caravans, they're Chrysler Pacificas and Voyagers. Again, I mentioned the Chevy Traverse as well as the Honda Odyssey. So quite a bit to choose from. We get new vans from Brownability, and the new vans are converted in Winamac, Indiana. We don't do that part here. And they ship them to all the dealers, and then we sell them. And then as we trade in and buy back vans, we have a whole bunch of used ones as well. So that range $25,000 for used up to $100,000 for new. Some pretty specific things to make it that much. Usually it's a high-end trim level van as well as all that equipment. So that's the gist of what we do and what a wheelchair accessible van or WAVE is and what it does.
You have pictures of some of the ones that you just mentioned. So these are just some examples of pictures of more of the full-size vans.
Yeah.
and trucks. But I think the next slides have pictures of the ones that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So
The
you want to
next
just
number
talk
of
about
slides.
these?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
This Dodge Grand Caravan is kind of the backbone of the industry. They stopped making it in 2020. They came out with the Pacifica and the Voyager, Chrysler did. So there's a lot of them out there. They're the ones they do the rear entry on for the most part as well. So I didn't discuss the rear entry part yet, but the one on the right, the conversion is a little bit different. It's done in the second and third row, kind of in a middle strip down there. So the wheelchair user drives up the ramp all the way up to the second row, or they can ride from the third row, where the wheelchair user cannot get their wheelchair into the driver's seat or the passenger front seat. It's just a different type of conversion. As you notice, there's no ground effects. It's not lowered. The floor is not lowered. That's why there's no ground effects. That conversion is about half the price new as the one on the left. We do probably 5 or 6 rear entries a year compared to 75 of what you see on the left of the regular side entry. So the rear entries we see a lot for transport companies, or if a family has somebody that's always going to be riding in the chair and they're a caregiver. The other ones are more flexible for the wheelchair user. Okay. See, the new Sienna hybrids are really nice. They get up to 36 miles to the gallon because of the hybrid. So as you're driving it, it's charging a battery, and it'll use that battery whenever possible. The Sienna's got one of the most rooms, that in the Pacifica. And if you flip to the Honda Odyssey next there, everybody loves their Hondas, so they're still very popular. And they got a little bit less room, so we always have to be aware of that. If someone has a bigger power chair or some sort of chair that has to lean back and it's tough to turn, then sometimes the Sienna or the Pacifica works a little bit better. But Honda and Toyota are always going to be popular. Okay. So the new Chevy Traverse, they are pretty sweet, of course. The people that just don't want a van, they want something what they feel is a little bit more stylish. Maybe they don't have a big family and it's just 2 of them. You can still get into the driver position. You can still get into the front passenger. You can still ride in the second row, but it's quite a bit smaller. So you have to just pick and choose which of our customers are best for that. But they are really nice. They're really sleek looking. If you look at the door, you can see how it slides open versus that's what they had to make a big change on, is that door. The one on the right is a rear entry done by a completely different company, which we don't do because it's not crash tested, but those are available in some markets, the rear entry Traverse.
Pat, can I go back to the Chrysler
Yep.
page? Can you explain a little bit what the companion van versus in-floor versus fold out XT, and rear entry? You kind of already explained rear entry and just the side fold out, but what's the XT and the companion van?
Yeah, good question. So the in-floor we call XI, just I for in-floor. What that means is the ramp, when it comes inside, literally disappears into the floor. And you don't even see it, which that one is popular just because of that feature in itself. The fold out XT, extra tall, that's how I like to think about it. What it does is it raises it the most amount possible to give you the biggest opening to get into the van. If you have a wheelchair user like my cohort Ryan here, who's 6'5", and he has a big power chair, well, that is important. You're not whacking your head when you come in. Those are the 2 most popular. Okay, the in-floor XI and the XT. They make what's called a companion van, which is even less popular than the rear entry. So in the companion van, they don't lower the floor. They create just the second row. They just lower the floor in the second row. So picture no seats in the second row and a big square. And that's where the wheelchair user would ride. And it also does not kneel to the ground. So it's a really specific chair, maybe for a family with a child that has a smaller chair. They're great because they're less expensive and it's more comfortable to drive because it's the original OEM seat and it has all your console and everything. So that's why we have it, because we still do some of those. But again, the in floor and the fold out are the most popular. The fold out's the most popular if you're a wheelchair user, power wheelchair user that wants to drive and they're by themselves. Here's why it's important. If for some reason your ramp isn't working, your power is gone, whatever, you can always from the inside just push the ramp and it'll go down manually. So that's why that one's popular and important to use if you're a wheelchair user by yourself that drives.
Gotcha. That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, let me flip back forward then to get back on track. So tell us a little bit about the difference between lifts and ramps, because I know mostly people in our FOP community are going to be looking for vans with ramps, but tell me a little bit about the difference between lifts and ramps.
Yeah. So these lifts are also made by Braun Ability, our parent company, and they can, as this picture shows, it's a side entry, but it can also be a rear entry. So what needs to be done in a van is the whole entire floor, all the seats need to come out and we need to redo the floor so you can put tie downs and be able to tie a chair down to the floor for safety and then also have seat belts. Then the lift itself is many different versions. You know, this one here looks like a folding ramp to me. There's also one that goes underneath a van and there's one that goes in the rear. The advantage of these are a little bit bigger. Tend to have more seating, and some of them, like a Ram ProMaster, are outfitted like a regular full-size van if you have a family that travels. These are very flexible. They'll lift up to 1,000 pounds, 800 to 1,000 pounds, and you can purchase one of these vans on your own and then put the lift in and redo the flooring. We're literally doing 2 of those this week. So it's very popular. You can use a full-size van, or you can use like a Transit full size, or you can use like a ProMaster by Ram, or you can do a Sprinter by Mercedes. So you can go out and pick your van and bring it to us and we can put one of these in. They're just as strong. It's just that you have to have a caregiver. This is somebody that has a caregiver with them all the time that uses these.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
So now ramps, this is more probably what people are here to find out about, is more of the minivans that have the ramp. So already talked about the whole ramp scenario where you can get side versus rear, but I think on the next slide I have, how do you start to decide what van is right for you, what vehicle is right for you, what ramp is right, side versus rear. So I put the link on here that Braun Ability has. There is a little quiz that they have that you can take on their website that'll ask you questions and at least get you started in the right direction. And then once you get in that right direction, you may want to go talk to a specialist. But tell us kind of how you help people figure out what van is going to be right for you.
Yeah, and that's, the most important thing is to make sure it's the right fit. First of all, the wheelchair user, how they're going to get in, how tall they are, what type of chair they have, does it turn around easily? Is it a power chair where the wheelchair user is using, or is the caregiver pushing, them up the ramp? So all those things really matter to which van we gravitate towards. Some people come in and say, I want a Toyota Sienna, and then they make it work. If they're not sure what they want, then we start asking all those questions about their chair. If there's a caregiver, if there's how often do you use it, if this is a daily driver versus once a week just for appointments. Do you have other children that are getting in and out of the vans? That's where the in-floor comes in handy, is you can open the door without the ramp coming out. Are you going to be a driver ever from that vehicle? Because then we know you need a side entry, wheelchair accessible van to be able to do that. If you're always going to be, if the wheelchair user is always going to be a passenger only, then you can look at all of them. You can look at the rear entry and the companion vans because they're a little bit less expensive as well. If you choose a wheelchair accessible van, you have more choices of minivans. That's one nice part about picking those. And there's more of them. We have 1,000 of it, 1,100 in our inventory. That's for 50 stores. So think about that. That's not really that many. And when you think about it, that's how hard they are to come by and why we take such good care of them, because they need to move on to the next person once someone's done.
And you mentioned like if you have kids or other kids in the family or a larger family, that the side entry is better. Can you kind of explain a little bit about some of the features of the the side entry and the ramp that goes into the floor
Yeah.
versus the ramp that folds up, like why that can sometimes be
Yeah.
limiting.
Well, there was a time that I took my kids to school. If you've ever been in line at a school and they're teaching you or they're telling you to get in and out fast, you don't want to sit there and wait for the door to open, the ramp to come out, and kneel to the ground when there's 28 other moms or and dads behind you in a hurry. So that's why the in-floor ramp is sometimes popular. The rear entry does have, some of them do have seats that in the second row that fold up and down. So on each side of the second row, you can put 2 seats down, and that allows 2 people to ride there. You'd have the driver, the passenger, the 2 people in the second row, and then the wheelchair user rides in the third row. Where a wheelchair side entry has the bench seat in the back. And if you have 3 children can easily ride back there in their booster seats and whatnot. A full-size van is really if you got a big family or you're going on a trip with a big family, it just gives you a little bit more room than the minivan. Still, those aren't nearly as popular. Again, probably half a dozen of those a year we sell. We'll probably do a dozen ramps a year, 1 a month. That's about right. We'll put ramps in the side of these bigger vans. But if you're a family of 5 or 6, then the minivans are a little bit easier to drive. They're a little bit smaller. They're easier to park. You know, when you have the side entry, you have to always be thoughtful of where you park. You need to park in the handicap accessible spots that give you the extra room. If for some reason they're not available, then you just take up 2 spots and park diagonal. And with the rear entry, obviously you can come out the back and you can park anywhere. So those are a few of the differences.
Yeah, and here's the rear entry, just to remind people that there's that cutout section in the back, and that's where the wheelchair sits. And yeah. I know something Keith mentioned to me when I came and visited you all that was interesting was, again, if you have other kids and they're in the van, or let's say you're on a trip and you put all the luggage in the back and your wheelchair user needs to get out and go to the restroom, you're gonna have to unpack all of the luggage, unpack all of the groceries, take everything out of the back in order to deploy the ramp. So that's another thing to think about versus the side ramp versus the rear ramp.
Yeah, if your family does take a lot of trips, that is something to really consider because, you know, who wants to do all that? I mean, you would if you had to. You know, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it does take some time. It does take some time to do that.
Yeah. I think the other thing he mentioned that I found interesting was on the side ramps like these, if you get a fold-up ramp that just comes in, which as Pat just mentioned are nice if you're driving by yourself because they can be done manually if something goes wrong. But if the wheelchair user is sitting next to that fold-in ramp, sometimes visually they may not be able to see out the window very well. And if they're a super tall person, they may need that floor lowered as far as possible, and that's going to change the visibility that someone has in the back seats.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make this number up, 80% of wheelchair users, either one's going to work fine. Then the scenarios we're talking about it really does matter which one you would pick.
All right. So then I learned from you all that pretty much you standard get the manual tie downs with a van that you purchase. So the ones on the upper left picture there. But do you want to explain the difference between one of these and the other 2 upgrades that you might want to consider?
Yeah. It's important if the person that your caregiver is the one that is using the tie downs, what they're able to do. You know, if someone is able to bend over and get on their knees if they need to get down to the floor to put all the tie downs on, then any of them are going to work. But if somebody's elderly or it's hard to do those, the ones, these retractable tie downs below are a little bit simpler to use because you don't have to adjust them. The manual tie downs, it's hard to tell by the picture, but you know, you have to push a button to loosen them up, and then you kind of have to pull them to tighten it. Where the retractable ones, you just pull it and hook it on and you're done. And then when it's time to get out, you just hit the little yellow button and it releases it. And it's more of a quick release. And that picture's a good picture. So the tie downs are meant to hold the chair in place. And the seat belt is meant to hold the person in place. So you have to have both. Now, when people leave our store, we don't know what they do, but this is the most safest and how it's crash tested to be the safest. The one on the right, this easy lock docking base, if someone is in and out of their vehicle a lot, this is something to consider. You can see the picture of it. There's a bolt hanging down, and as you drive over that base, it locks itself in, and that's all you got to do. There's no tie, there's no ties, there's no tie downs. You're in and out in 30 seconds. So that's if somebody's in and out a lot. We definitely suggest those, especially if they're a driver. Then if you have to use it if you're a driver, that easy lock system. Big difference when it comes to cost. The tie downs, the manual tie downs are a couple $100. That docking system is, $3,000. So the retractable tie downs is used a lot, and it really depends on the caregiver and their abilities to use the tie downs, to which ones work the best for them. Yep.
Now, if you were to start with like either the manual or the retractable tie downs, is it an easy thing to go back like 5 or 10 years down the road to get the automatic docking
Always,
system?
yeah. Every van comes with the manual tie downs in them, whether it's brand new or used. And then the retractable ones we're upgrading, for $400 or $500 more for those. If somebody purchases those right in the beginning, they can do that. Some people know right away that's what they want. Some people come back 3 weeks later, like, I don't want to do this. You were right. Let's go back to these other ones. But not everybody cares. There's a lot of people that use the manual ones. They work great. Money adds up. Every $500 is a big deal. So
definitely. And we're going to get to the money side of things real quickly. So I think you kind of already mentioned a lot of these, but you were mentioning all the questions to ask about, am I going to fit through the door of the car? Is the wheelchair going to fit through the door? Where do I want to be sitting in the vehicle? Do I want to be a driver, a passenger, or am I fine with being in the second row or third row? Will there be a caregiver? So you kind of covered all this, but I did want to mention on this slide that there is a little step-by-step guide. And I will have these slides available for everyone, but also because this is a part of the advocacy series, we are going to have a workbook that will have worksheets in it, and all of these resources will be in that workbook with all of the links provided and a little guide that you can use to help figure out what kind of van might be work best for you and what kind of options you might need. So we'll have a survey going out after the webinar is over to ask if you already have a notebook and you just want the worksheets from this series, or if you want to get a workbook all the way back from the entire advocacy series that we've done for the last 3 years, then you can request that. So this is a question I'm sure a lot of people are wondering is, can I modify my current vehicle? I love it so much. I want to keep it. Can I modify it?
Yeah. I love that picture, by the way. Reminds me of the movie Cars. Okay. So all the same vans I just mentioned that we sell are all the same vans that can be modified. There is some criteria. They've gone up to, they continually change the criteria, 50,000 up to 60,000. It really, we need to look at the van and see, and it's got to be certain years. It can only be, I'm looking up because I have the list right here because people are always asking me. The Chrysler Pacifica is 2017 and newer. The Voyager is 2020 and newer, simply because that's when they started making it. The Sienna Hybrid is all they convert. They don't convert older Siennas anymore. So you have to get a 21 or 22 Sienna. They do not convert Caravans anymore. That just ended a few months ago. And then a Honda Odyssey is 2018 or newer. I know that was a lot of quick information, but the same vans we sell are the same ones we can convert. And again, we ship it off to Winnemac, Indiana, where Braun Ability is. The process takes 4 to 6 weeks to get there, goes through the assembly line, they get it converted, and they ship it back. So we probably do 2 to 4 of those a year for somebody, and it's usually somebody has a particular van they want, that or they already own the van and they just want a new conversion. Can be up to $40,000 just for the conversion part. So it's still something that's an expensive thing to do, but it still gets done all the time.
Yeah, that is pricey. We're definitely going to talk about the finances.
Yeah.
What about the option of, if I find a van at another dealership, or I'm just out on a Saturday and I find a van I like, can I then bring that in for modification?
Again, as long as it fits the criteria, then the answer is yes. The criteria is smaller than it used to be because the Dodge Grand Caravans are no longer doing them. So these conversions, so for example, because if we send it a Braun Ability to do a rear entry conversion, a companion conversion, or a side entry conversions, they're starting at $20,000 for the companion and rear entry. And I think the new Siennas are now like $41,000 to convert brand new. It's pretty it's pretty big deal, the things they have to do to it. Especially that hybrid, they got to change a lot of the way the power is done and the batteries need to be moved. But so that's the way Braun Ability does it. There's other conversion companies out there that may be different. Braun Ability is one of the gold standards, as well as crash tested. Teach you how to tie the chair down correctly and put your seatbelt on. You're going to be as safe as possible. And that's important, very important.
Yeah.
So if somebody is going to buy one from a dealership, the best thing to do is call us and say, hey,
Yeah.
Pat, this is what I'm looking at. Because there is every once in a while a high-end van that's got a high trim level that we can't do for whatever reason.
Better safe than sorry. Better safe to contact.
Yes, exactly.
Contact you all first and then make your decision. So tell me a little bit about rentals, because I know you also do rentals. You don't have to always purchase if you're just wanting to try it, or you literally only need it for a vacation or something like that.
No, it's Janet is our rental coordinator, and we have 5 vans. If she had 10 vans, they'd always be rented. You know, we have 5 vans and they're always rented. And they are the new ones, the Toyota Siennas and the Chrysler Pacificas. You know, they're $150 a day plus tax, and you get 125 miles each day. So if you're going on a long trip, you got to consider you're going to be paying some overages for miles. But we have repeat customers that twice a month they're coming in, taking a loved one to a doctor's appointment. That's all they need it for. So they just rent it each time. Some people know that they're going to be driving enough. If you own one of these vans, it opens up your freedom to be able to go and do whatever you want, whenever you want. Versus rental, you have to really plan ahead a week or two to make sure we have one, because they're always rented. And it's not like renting a regular car. It's more expensive than renting a regular car. So you have to really think about how many times am I going to rent before I start thinking about putting that money towards purchasing one.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the money then, because I know you all go ahead and you can help with financing, just like a car dealership would help you finance your car and figure out a payment plan. But I just wanted to let our FOP community know that typically Medicaid and Medicare will not cover funding for accessible vans. But I do want to make sure that you know about Medicaid waivers and that you look into the waivers. Now, every state is different. Every Medicaid is different in every state, and there's going to be different waivers in every state. But sometimes there are waivers that may have some little clause in there that may provide some funding towards an accessible van. So it's definitely important to get to know Medicaid. Even if you think you financially don't qualify for Medicaid, you still need to look into it for either your child who has FOP, or even if a teenager or young adult has FOP, because sometimes you can qualify just because of the diagnosis, not necessarily always on financial criteria. So it's important to look into. There's also your Centers for Independent Living. These organizations are all over the United States. They all have different names. In Missouri, I know ours is called The Whole Person. So they're not always called the same thing. But if you Google Centers for Independent Living in your state, you can contact them. And if they don't have any kind of resources or funding available for vans, they can usually direct you to other organizations in your state that might be able to help. Vocational rehab, I'm hoping that, and I know Steve's on here, I'm hoping he's going to be doing a podcast with me on using vocational rehab, but this is definitely a program you want to look into if you are the person with FOP, or whether it's your child with FOP that is maybe in college, or is going to be getting a career. Vocational rehab can help with some funding for accessible vans if you need that van to pursue or maintain a job. So I do know that some states, again, this is a very state-by-state program. Some states have great vocational rehab programs. Some states have very poor vocational rehab programs. But it still is important to look up what you have in your state and see if there's any available resources or funding. And they don't do just vans. There's other equipment and things that you can get through your vocational rehab. And I know that, Pat, you all work closely with a lot of the vocational rehab programs, don't you?
Yeah. And I think I have 5 or 6 right now that are in the process of getting a wheelchair accessible van, and then voc rehab, if they qualify for this, they will pay for the conversion, hand controls, that easy lock system, anything they need to be able to drive that vehicle, or if they're riding, but usually this person is driving the vehicle. so they can get to their job. And it can be up to $50,000 or more, so it's totally worth getting in their system. If you're a student still, as she mentioned, or if you're working or trying to go back to work, this is there for you. The program can take months to do, but it's totally worth it. Totally worth it. It's one of the bigger ones that is a very popular one here, because the Kansas Voc and Missouri Voc Rehab both do a very good job of getting people approved.
Yeah, again, it's very state by state. So definitely look into your state, wherever you are, to see what is available. And I think the Voc Rehab people are very knowledgeable also in your state, where they may also know additional funding that you might be able to reach out to. And then I put just a list of a few other government agencies that you might be able to contact to see if there's any funding available for the van or the van modifications itself. Department of Rehab Services, Aging and Disability Resource Centers, Council for Developmental Disabilities, the Disabilities Act Center, and then Assistive Technology Exchange. And also the Assistive Technology Exchange, there are different assistive technology type programs in different states. Again, they're going to have different names, but you just need to Google assistive technology organizations in your state and things will pop up. And honestly, you just need to start calling. You need to start asking people over the phone, where can I call? Who can I call? Write down the names and phone numbers of the people you talk to and get them to refer you to someone else, and just keep going, keep searching until you find who it is that you need to talk to that understands about all these different types of programs.
Yep.
Exhausting, definitely exhausting, but it's worth it. I mean, this is why this is a big topic of the advocacy series, because we just want you to know that you need to prepare yourself, because it is going to take some perseverance. You're going to have to advocate to get your transportation, but in the end, if it gives you a little bit of independence, then it's totally worth it. So the last two on here I just wanted to remind everyone of is that you probably will have to do some personal fundraising, either in your local community. You could do a GoFundMe campaign. You can look into the local types of charities you are, churches, different organizations or groups that might have funding, or you might have to get creative. The Quality Life Awards has approved to help pay a small portion of the van conversion for families. So that's something to think about. But again, there's a lot of resources out there. You just have to dig deep to find them, which is why it's really important to plan in advance for these things. So last, Pat, I was hoping we could just talk about before we do some Q&A is if someone is maybe a younger teenager, young adult with FOP, and they still have mobility, they're just using a wheelchair maybe for longer distances, but they can still walk, or they're using a scooter, there's definitely other mobility products that that Brown Ability, United Access, that you offer that maybe you don't need a whole entire accessible van. So I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about these different options: the scooter, the lifts, the accessible seating, and the transfer seating.
Yeah, and I think if we were to put a percentage to it, it's pretty close to 50-50, a van or a lift, the what we do here. So it's very popular. As you can see in this picture, there's a couple of them already. There's some that go into the hitch. That one picture with the hitch is made by Harmar. The other one with this crane style system with the red scooter, that looks like a Bruno. So Bruno and Harmar are our two main partners. If you're ever not sure exactly what they are, go to either one of their websites. They're great. They have videos that show you how to use them. If you're putting something in the hitch of a vehicle, most of the time it's a scooter or a chair that's not a big power chair, because it just can't handle it. Most cars can't handle 500 pounds in their hitch. Little red truck, the red truck in the middle there has a crane system in the back of the truck that it'll lift a chair or a scooter up and put it in the back of that bed. This is usually after the person has transferred into the driver's seat. There's a couple different ways to do that, which I know there's a slide coming up that shows that. All these are options, whether it's a $2,000 lift or a $6,000 lift, depending on which one it is. They all typically will hold up to, 400 or 500 pounds. So if it's a manual chair, you may not need any of what we're looking at here. These are probably a little too heavy duty for what you need for the manual chair. So here's the first few examples. If you want to go, I think it's the next slide that you got some.
Yeah, these are all of the internal, if you want to store your vehicle on the inside. Yeah.
You kind of get in the same thing, like you can see this one on the right, this Joey lift, it has to be for the most part in a van. So there's enough room for that power chair to get in there. And if it's a scooter, you got to make sure it's not too long from side to side to get in there. The Joy one's probably the most popular. We see that one a lot because you can have any van just about to put that in. You do lose your third row there, of course, because the third row is either taken out, or the newer ones, they just fold into the floor. And what's great about the Joey lift is you can take it out, you can flip the seats back up and use it like you did before, or if you were selling it. This other one, again, we would see that one a lot in an SUV, where, we don't want to take apart everything to put it in, but we need some help lifting it up. And the bottom line is we got to always check if it'll fit. It's usually almost always the height is the problem. Sometimes these chairs come apart in two pieces, but that bottom piece where the battery is still weighs 60, 70 pounds. Is just too much to pick up. So either one of these are very popular, just because of that. The Outsider is the most popular for the hitch mounted carrier. Your car needs to be able to tow. And say you have a towing capacity of 3,500 pounds, that means you can put 350 pounds in the hitch. The lift itself weighs 100. So that leaves you 250 pounds left for your scooter / chair. So a lot of power chairs weigh more than that. That's why I mentioned that. Most of the time it's for a scooter, just like this one. That lift there folds straight up and down when you're not using it. And then it also swings away so you can get in the back still. There was a picture on the previous slide that had that swing away on there. Maybe it's one more back. Yeah, see how it's swung away. I'm pointing at it like you can see me pointing at it, but you can see how it swings out of the way. So
oh yeah, this one. Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah. So go back to that 2 ahead again. Okay, so this Chariot, we don't do very many of those. First of all, they're super expensive. But if you don't have any other choice, if you have like this person has a sedan that can't put 350 pounds in the tongue, they can lease. It's almost like a trailer. So we'll do maybe one of those a year. They're just not quite as popular, just because of the price, and they're kind of big. It's kind of hard to pull that in your garage. Yeah.
Well, and I will say, ironically, we do have one community member that does use this because his body position, he's a little bit more bent over, and so a wheelchair just doesn't work for him. So he does use a scooter, and he already had a sedan car that he is able to get into the passenger seat on his own. So for him, this actually was the best option. So you just never know. You usually need to go into a facility and talk with the specialists.
And that's why they still make it, just for the exact same reason. There's always somebody that it works perfect for. Okay, this vehicle seating is pretty high-tech stuff, where the Jeep, that bottom left, a manual chair user is able to pull up right next to the seat that they have pushed a button. That seat turned and came out and lowered to the ground, so they transfer from one to the other. Then once they're in the driver's seat, they can then pick up their chair, or a caregiver can put it in the vehicle. The blue truck, you can see this gentleman more than likely is getting ready to transfer, and then he probably has a crane in the back of his truck that's going to pick his wheelchair up once he's inside the car. It's really slick for the people that have a truck, or that work out in a farm, or they just want a truck. They're the people that get those. It's usually somebody that lives out, in a farming area. The young lady that's in the middle there, that's a tourney seat from Braun, and we see a lot of those in a second row of a van for your child, that you could have their whatever they're using, whether it's a manual chair or some sort of scooter, get them close to that, and they can just slide over and transfer into that chair, and then they push a button, it turns them back inside.
And I think that this might be useful for maybe like our younger community members who maybe can drive with just a few adaptations to maybe the mirrors and the steering wheel, but maybe because of their body position just have a harder time physically getting in the car independently. So something like this may actually work really well for someone who's younger just to get them in the car safely.
Yeah.
But if they can still walk on their own, I can see this being a great option.
Yeah. We see this chair the most in that blue truck. The gentleman in the left, top left there, where that's where we see this seat the most of the time. We're literally installing the one just like the one in the middle there with that young girl into a van right now. So it's popular. So I don't see too many Jeeps that we put them in, but that's a pretty nice one there.
Yeah, I'd take that one.
Yeah.
So the last thing then, here's some examples to see those a little bit more closely.
Oh yeah, those are all good. Okay, so let's talk about this one on the left. This is probably one of the more popular things we do. You're a wheelchair user, whether you use a power chair or whether you use a manual chair, you have a side entry van, lowered floor. You pull up and you kind of park right behind the front passenger seat. Then you push a button and the driver's seat turns. As you can see, it's turning all the way to the second row. You transfer from your chair into that seat. Now you can use the controls and you turn all the way forward and you're going to drive from that seat. Very popular because not everyone wants to drive from their chair. They're in their chair all day or they work in their chair and it's just something different, a little more comfortable for on trips. So we see that one a lot. It's somebody that needs to take their chair with them or they can't transfer from outside the car to inside the car. That transfer seat can go in either position, by the way. We've done it where the same person got two of them, one on each side. Sometimes she drives and sometimes she's a passenger. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, this seems really convenient too if it's snowing or raining and you don't want to be outside transferring out of a wheelchair into a seat. This is a nice option for that.
Just get in the car so you're not getting snowed on or wet. The link seat versus the Turn Evo seat, they both do the same thing, but the link seat lowers to the ground a little further. So that's why it's popular in a truck because trucks sit higher off the ground. The Turn Evo seat can go in a truck if it's not a full size lifted truck, but a lot of times they're in a van as well. Some cars you can do it, but you got to have the room. You got to have the room to be able to navigate that chair in there. So these are the three most popular ones right here for sure.
And then this last version, this is kind of the ultra inexpensive, but I wanted to give people the option and know that it's out there. But this is just a little extra seat installed to help you transfer again.
Yeah, so what you're seeing on the right there is the wheelchair users pulled up right next to it and slides, that board helps slide them over into their seat. And then it just folds straight up and you go. And it's definitely a way that works. Is each person is different to what they can do. And this is a little bit less expensive because there's no moving parts under the seat to bring it out.
And did I also read that these can the installation's fairly easy, but you can also physically take it off very easily and put it back on if you don't need it in there?
I'm not sure I'm going to answer to that one. I've never seen someone just take it off once it's installed. Maybe there's a kind out there. This is an Accento seat here that if it comes off, I haven't seen that, the transfer board. So maybe there is one out there.
But I think there's one where it gets installed on the on the side of the car behind the back of that front seat. I think it's like a post system where the post goes down into some kind of bracket, and so that it's more easily removable if someone doesn't want it there.
Yeah, because these are adapt solutions. This is Accento seat. So okay, great.
So we have a little bit of time left. We have about 10 minutes left for some Q&A.
I saw there's a lot of chats and questions.
There's a lot of chats. I know it. I missed out on it. I want to go back and look here. So some of the Q&A says, do you sell the complete car or just the adaptation? So I think you've answered that you can kind of do both. You can get the whole van or you can get a van similar to the kinds that are adapted.
And again, 95 times out of 100, if not even more, somebody's buying a van that's already done just for the ease. It's just easier because we already have it. It's already done. It's already converted. We have one off right now that is a customer's owned van and it's being converted right now. So it does happen.
It looks like Steve had a question, or he said something about the quick tie down of the Easy Lock, but does it affect the ground clearance of the car?
I think what he's getting at is the bolt we put a bracket on the bottom of the chairs, and then that bolt hangs down, and
Gotcha.
then the clearance from the bolt to the ground can create a little bit of issues on thresholds, rugs, if you're outside. If you have a chair that's center wheeled, as the wheels go up, the bolt goes up. But if you have like a front wheel drive chair or a rear wheel drive chair, that's where we see that can become an issue. You just have to decide what's most important to be able to have the easy lock system, or we can adjust that bolt too to get it up as high as possible. But we do see it from time to time, and we just address it and fix it.
Gotcha. And then he was also asking about, we didn't include using VA help
Right.
or financing, just because a lot of our community members with FOP are not going to be veterans. But that is another financial assistance avenue that someone could take. But he was asking what percentage of vans that you sold last year were the veteran type subsidized from that type of nonprofit funding. Do you know?
Yeah, well, I would say here in Kansas City, and it's probably like most cities with the VA, this company would probably not be here if there wasn't a VA to finance, to pay for these things. It's just they've kind of started the industry from a veteran standpoint, and we probably do, say we do 75 to 100 vans, and say 25% of them are veterans that every 2 to 5 years are getting a new van. So that industry is important because they purchase new ones and then they trade them in and they become used ones. So that's why that community is important, even though your people aren't, they're not a part of the veteran community, but it's important because the veterans are the one trading in the used vans as well to supply some inventory. Right.
That's
so
true.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Let me go through some of these old chats. Steve was putting in a bunch of good information in the chat for people along the way. Yakov, you were asking about the resources that I mentioned for finding funding, like the government ones. I will be putting all of these resources online. Like I'll put the slides on our YouTube channel that you can download to get a copy of the slides in addition to just watching the webinar again, but you'll be able to get that from our YouTube channel. And then Gary had a question, which Gary, people are going to think I planted you, but he was asking questions about if someone just needs additional help with mirrors, if they just are limited in a little bit of neck mobility, and some of those types of options may not necessarily be done by you all. Is that correct? But they're
a lot of those things come from a driving evaluator, and the driving evaluators tell us what it's like a prescription they're writing, that a lot of things we can't install unless they're doing that. So if a person wants to drive that has some of these issues and they go to drive an evaluator, they're going to help figure out. And then we do have different cameras. If we want to install a backup camera here or one over here, and we have a company that does those sort of things, or different types of mirrors. But almost 100% of the time, those come from a drive-in evaluator, because that's not what we do the best. They're trained for that. So in Gary's scenario here is I would get with a drive-in evaluator and let them help you navigate that.
Yeah. And Gary, that's actually the next webinar we're going to do. We don't normally do 2 webinars on a topic with the advocacy series, but there was just so much to cover on accessible driving and transportation.
Yeah.
So actually the next webinar that we're going to do is I'm hoping to get someone from the local rehabilitation driving program here in Kansas City to talk a little bit about what those evaluations look like, what happens during them, and what are some of the options that are out there to make those types of vehicles a little bit more accessible. So that was a really good segue. Thank you, Gary.
So I'll see one. Is there any dealers in California? And the answer is yes. Sacramento. There's a new one. I'm looking at my list. There's a number of them in most of the major cities. Pasadena, or that's Texas. Sorry, San Diego, Stanton, Long Beach, San Bernardino, Santa Rosa. So up and down the coast, at least. So there is some available. You can just go to United Access and see all their different places you can go.
And even though you're with United Access, we do want to say there are a few other companies out there, not just Mobility or United Access, but you just have to search. Yeah, you just have to search, but you do want to get someone reputable, and you also want to think about the fact that United Access or Brownability, they can not only sell you the van, but maybe even potentially do some repairs or
Yeah.
help you fix something that's not quite right. Whereas some dealerships or some, organizations may not help you do that. So do your research before you choose where you're going to purchase from.
And that's a great point, because as a dealership, we're getting these vans ready again for sale, and they go through a reconditioning program. That's the advantage of buying it from a dealer. You can definitely buy it from an individual and we will still service it, but you don't know the story behind it like we do. And that's part of the reason we're here.
Yeah. And Yakov, actually, that's a good question to ask too along these lines, is how long do these vans typically last?
Yeah.
If you take care of them.
They can last 20 years. If you're the person that's great at all your oil changes, coming in here and doing maintenance every 6 months on the ramp, and quite frankly, repairing things. It depends how much you drive. If you're going to drive 200,000 miles in 5 years, then that's how long it's going to last you. So these vans last just as long as they would if they're a regular van. Just because it has a motorized ramp doesn't make the quality of the van different. And they all come with certain warranties when they're new. So we have a repair shop that does repair things as needed. I'm curious, this one of it from Kyle. I'm going to read it again. Have you done any work with small city electric golf cart style vehicles, making them drivable? So we've installed hand controls and just about everything. Sure Grip, SURE Grip. They have a spot on there where they have whatever the all-terrain ATC vehicles with hand controls. So I'm sure there's a golf cart one out there as well. We haven't done one here though, but I'm sure it can be done.
I think we got to all of the questions. So like I said, we do have an Advocacy Series workbook that if you already have the workbook and you just want the worksheets, they're going to be generated from the community panel talk we did last fall, from this webinar, and then the future webinar that I'm hoping to do on the adaptive driving programs. Put that in the survey. I'm going to have a survey going out the next few days for all of you that attended today, and you can have access to all of these resources. Plus, this recording will be on the YouTube channel early next week for you to go back and look at again if you missed anything or want to see anything again. And then I did want to just do one quick little plug. The next webinar we actually have coming up, it's not with the Advocacy Series, but it will be with Dr. Chang from Canada. And it will be on FOP lung health. I know we talk a lot about COVID and the precautions to take against COVID, but we don't necessarily remind you very often of just the general care that you need to do for your lungs. So this will be a really great webinar that she's going to be presenting on with Hope Newport for FOP lung health. So definitely join us then. And just thank you so much for joining today. We were glad to see so many of you attend and learn about this. And I hope that means everyone's going to be a little more proactive about thinking about their transportation down the road. And thanks to you, Pat, and to Ryan, who couldn't join, and to Keith, who couldn't join. But you guys were great to work with. You were a lot of fun. You taught me a lot too. So thank you so much.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Everyone. Bye. Enjoy your evening.